Hi, my name is Kevin Kuhn. Thank you for attending our Everything You Need to Know About Law School micro webinar today. Um, Today we'll be hearing from a great panel of veterans and some attorneys, some law school students to learn what it means to transition off active duty and into the legal sector. You'll also get some nuts and bolts of how to apply to law school, how to manage the GI Bill and Yellow Ribbon program. And then you'll also hear a little bit about what it's like to be an associate at a law firm and what other tracks there are in the legal profession. To start out, a little bit about myself. I'm a 2008 graduate of the U.S. Coast Guard Academy. I served on active duty for about 11 years, got a master's degree in electrical engineering, and it was during my last tour at Coast Guard headquarters in Washington, D.C., that I started to think about law school. I was doing a lot of policy work, regulation development, and working with attorneys on a daily basis. I started to really get interested, and so I opened up my network and kind of looked around and tried to see who was in my network that I maybe wanted to be like one day. And for me, the decision to transition off active duty really, I tried to get as much certainty about that decision as I could. Granted, there are so many unknowns, and you know, you could always change your mind after you get into it. But you have to make the best decision you can on the data you have available. So for me, the way I did that was to look around the legal sector and try and find the job or the person that I could see myself being. Find that dream job. Once I found that, I discovered I wanted to do patent litigation. I kind of reverse engineered how to get to that position. The legal sector, for better or worse, a lot of the data about salaries, where law firms hire from, what schools, and then law school admissions data. It's all very accessible online. So I found the law firms that I really wanted to work at. I then found what law schools they generally hired from. And then I looked at the law school admissions data. And the main thing you want to find is the LSAT, the law school admissions test, median score to get into the school of your dreams. For me, I wanted to go to Georgetown Law, and after taking a practice LSAT, a prep course, I didn't quite get that LSAT score that I was hoping for. So I started my law school career at American University, Washington College of Law. And one of the great things about the GI Bill benefit and Yellow Ribbon program is that you can change schools after your first year if you choose to. And a lot of your law school classmates are not in the same boat because they might be receiving financial aid at a certain school, and once you transfer, you're generally not eligible for student aid. So I transferred. I'm in the school of my dreams. Last summer, I worked at Orrick, Harrington, and Sutcliffe, the law firm of my dreams, and just about a month ago, I signed a contract to return after graduation. So that's how the path worked out for me. You'll hear from some other great veterans and learn a bit about their paths, and also some more nuts and bolts of attending law school.
Hello, my name is Luke Reed. I'm delighted to be with you and share with you some of my experience as a Service Academy graduate and retired military officer, now working in the legal profession in the private sector. So a little bit about me. I'm a U.S. Coast Guard Academy graduate, class of 1990. After serving aboard ship upon graduation from the academy, I attended grad school. I obtained 2 advanced engineering degrees, and during my follow-on assignment in Washington, D.C., I decided I wanted to go to law school. And it was something I had thought about for a long time. And my journey included going to law school at night and working during the day in my active duty assignment. And that worked well for me. Everybody has their own sort of path to get there. I eventually transitioned, after graduation from law school, I transitioned into the Coast Guard's legal program. So my career, I spent about 20 years on active duty. About half that time was spent in legal assignments, and the other half was spent in regular Coast Guard operational and technical assignments. And so after I retired, I entered into private practice. Currently, I'm a partner at K&L Gates in Boston, and I work in our global maritime practice, advising our maritime clients around the globe. So that's my sort of journey in a nutshell. And so what should you be thinking about if you're considering law school or entering into the legal profession? So let me first say this. Service Academy graduates, and I would say military officers generally, for that matter, have some important attributes that really translate quite well into the legal profession. You're comfortable operating in a complicated environment, solving complex problems. You work well in teams. You can lead other people. You have a strong work ethic. You're good attention to detail. You're trustworthy. You have the ability to assess and mitigate risk. And so, and you can communicate well. I mean, those are really attributes of a military officer, and those are also some of the key ingredients to being a successful lawyer. And so the first message is, if you want to go to law school to become a lawyer and enter the legal profession, you're very well prepared to do that. So let me just say that sort of as the initial point for you to consider. The second thing I would say is that if you do decide to go to law school and decide that that's the right choice for you, and that's a decision that in and of itself should be made with much thought and care, but try to really think about what area of the law interests you. The first fundamental question, I think, departing or exiting military officers should ask themselves is whether you want to practice in an area of the law related to your service in the military, whether that service is 5 years or 20 years, or alternatively, do you want to practice in an area of law completely unrelated to your service in the military? And so that's sort of a threshold fundamental question I think you should ask yourself. For me, I decided to stay on active duty after law school and practice maritime law upon my retirement from the service. So my current practice is very much like what I did on active duty, and so other people choose a different path. They choose an area of the law that's completely unrelated to their service in the military. And so the point here is that there's really no single right answer. You have to ask yourself, what areas of the law you're interested in. What are you good at? Where's the most opportunity for you for professional growth? These kinds of questions. Do you want to work at a corporation? Do you want to work in government and private practice? All those places have lawyers that work there. If you work in private practice, do you want to work at a small firm or a large firm? All these things you should be thinking about. And indeed, these are quite difficult decisions personally that do take time to fully discern. And that's natural in my experience. Lastly, and sort of related to the last point, is that Service Academy graduates and all veterans for that matter are really very willing to help and talk to you. So use those resources and benefit from that experience. And those resources are really quite actually abundant in the legal profession. I can't really stress that enough. So my message to you is really you're very well prepared to go to law school and enter the legal profession if that's what you want to do. But there are so many different paths to get there, it can be overwhelming. And to make good decisions in that regard, really the best thing you can do is talk to others who have gone through that process, learn from them, talk to them what they're doing now, and explore how you might proceed on your own professional path.
Hi, my name's Hansen Colby, and I'm excited to talk to you today about my journey to law school and some things that you might want to think about if you decide to transition from your time in the military to pursuing a legal career. A little bit about me. I am a 2012 West Point graduate. I commissioned as an aviation officer and I served on active duty for 8 years as an Apache helicopter pilot with a few deployments overseas. I started thinking in my last big job in the Army as a company commander about what I might want to do if I left the service, and my exposure to UCMJ and other legal issues during my time as a commander really motivated me to attend law school and made me realize it was something I really had an interest in. So I just want to talk to you briefly about some things to consider when you're making the transition and you're applying to law school. The first thing, and I think the most important thing that you can do to make yourself a strong law school candidate is to study for and do well on the LSAT. The LSAT really is the test which law schools use to be able to rack and stack candidates from across the spectrum. Since GPA is different at every school and experiences are different, between different workplaces, LSAT really gives these schools a quantifiable factor that they can balance candidates from across the entire spectrum. And while it's true that schools will look favorably upon your military service, and that will definitely factor into the admissions decision, it's much harder to overcome a low LSAT score than if you're just below the range or in the middle of the band of what the school is looking for, and you'll really see that your military experience will push you over the edge. But unlike other paths to graduate schools, for example, business school, I really think the LSAT score is a crucial part of the admissions experience and something that you shouldn't take lightly. So take the time, study for the test. If you need to, get some help. There's plenty of resources out there. Consider getting a tutor. Make sure you're using the right products, but really take the test seriously and realize that it's really going to write your ticket forward to law school. The second thing is the importance of translating your military experience into something that law school admissions committees will understand. Because law schools don't receive as many applicants who with military backgrounds as compared to other graduate programs, for example, business school again, it's really important that you are able to speak about your experiences in ways that relate to your desire to practice law and show that the strengths that you would bring to the school and ultimately to practicing law. One way you can do this is to find a mentor, someone who is a veteran who already practices, and help them take a look at your resume or look at your essays. I did that, and I also was fortunate enough to use an organization called Service to School, which is a nonprofit organization run by veterans for veterans that pairs veterans up with mentors who assist them into getting into graduate programs. I highly recommend them. I had a phenomenal experience, and I really think that it helped strengthen the quality of my resume as well as my essays that I ended up submitting to law schools. Third thing I would mention is the importance of researching, if you're going to be using the GI Bill and or the Yellow Ribbon program, researching that for each school that you are planning on applying to. If you've served a certain amount of time in the military, you'll have 100% of the GI Bill. And once you have 100% of the GI Bill, you'll be eligible for the Yellow Ribbon program at schools. The difference between the GI Bill and the Yellow Ribbon program is that while the GI Bill is a set amount of money based upon your years of service, the Yellow Ribbon program really differs based upon the school. Some schools will only contribute a small amount of money, which will result in the government matching that same amount of money. Other schools, such as Georgetown, will cover the remainder of tuition, which the VA will cover that second half of the remaining tuition, which basically means you get to go to school for free. So do the research and look at the schools to make sure you know what those Yellow Ribbon program contributions are going to be. And I would recommend to apply to schools where those offerings are the most advantageous and the most beneficial to you.
Hi, my name is Matt Reeder. I'm an associate at Warwick Harrington Sutcliffe. I've been with the firm a little over 3 years and joined after completing about 8 years on active duty as a judge advocate in the Marine Corps. I'm not a service academy graduate. I commissioned into the Marine Corps while I was in law school. I went to Marine Corps OCS in the summer of 2007 and commissioned immediately thereafter. I finished law school and then began full-time active duty in the fall of 2010 after I passed the bar, and served for about 8 years before getting out and joining ORIC to begin my career in private practice. Kevin asked me specifically to compare my experiences in uniform to my experiences in private practice. If I had to boil it down to one key point, I think I would say that the level of autonomy and responsibility that I had as a Marine Corps officer was greater than the autonomy that I have as an associate at a large firm. And that certainly took some getting used to. The benefit, though, is that there's a certain discipline to practicing law in a large firm that is helpful, and I expect to serve me for the rest of my career, regardless of whether I stay at ORIC or land elsewhere at some point. So I would encourage each of you, if you choose to pursue a career in the law, to keep that in mind and realize that in many ways you'll be starting over. Which gets me to something that I'd like to spend my time really focusing on with you, which is to emphasize for you what I think is both your greatest advantage and greatest disadvantage as service academy graduates considering going to law school. You already have an excellent undergraduate education. Having finished a degree at a service academy will be meaningful to law school admissions officers. And having served in uniform will put you in a different group of applicants, one that's more mature, one that can be expected to frankly perform better in law school. So I think you're well positioned to succeed in the law school application process, and then as law students once you arrive. And you shouldn't underrate that. In terms of having choices about what you'll do when you graduate, picking the best law school you can get into and afford, given whatever your financial constraints might be, will set you up well. And then performing well at that school once you arrive will ensure that you have a lot of options when it comes time to look for a job. So at this stage, if you know that you want to practice law, I would encourage you to really focus in on getting into the best school that you can and that you're comfortable paying for, or that you have scholarship or benefits to use to attend. Upon graduation, you again will have a huge advantage as someone who is non-traditional and has actual experience. Many of you, I presume, will have deployed, will have held meaningful leadership roles, will understand what it means to manage and lead other people. And frankly, we'll have been exposed to people from a lot of different walks of life and different socioeconomic backgrounds, which will just make you a well-rounded person. So that'll be a huge advantage for you when you're taking on campus interviews and competing with many of your law school classmates who have gone straight from undergraduate institutions to law school. Now, I say that it's also a disadvantage because you'll be starting over. Most of you are probably 03s or 04s. Perhaps a few have spent more time in uniform after graduating from academy and are thinking of law school as truly a second career. And I think you're in a slightly different position, also starting over, but perhaps with maybe clearer expectations. But for those who have served 5, 6, 8 years and are thinking about law school, I do think it's important to realize that your peers, when you leave law school and join a firm, will be 25-year-olds who have gone to undergraduate institutions and then finished law school. That's not universally true, but I think will generally be your experience. So When you get out, you'll have an incredible maturity. Your value proposition to any organization you join will be irresistible. But your peer group will not be what you're used to, having come from active duty, where you have peers who are of a similar age and who share a really high level of responsibility. So I'd encourage you just to keep that in mind. That's not to discourage you at all. I think you should think of it as an advantage, but also think about how you'll handle that, because it can present some challenges, especially when it comes to how we think of peer leadership and what that might look like as a civilian, given that you'll be older, but perhaps not looked at as more qualified in terms of where you begin within a given organization. So I'll leave you with those thoughts. Thanks for watching. And the one thing I think everybody has hit on, and I'll emphasize again, the thing that is going to prove most helpful to you as you transition off of active duty to law school and then ultimately apply for and accept a job will be your interpersonal skills and your network. And you already have an incredible network, whether you know it or not. I was shocked when I was transitioning off of active duty, the number of associates and partners in the types of firms I was interested in joining who would respond to a cold email and agree to have a phone call with me or review a resume for me and give advice. So I'll end by saying that you should please consider those of us on this webinar to be part of your network now. Our contact information will be provided at the end of the video. If you have questions or if there's any way that we can be helpful to you, please contact us and we'd be glad to do that. Thanks for watching.